Hello and welcome to the Story Shed. And I have a story for you today that was collected by the Grimm Brothers. And I hope you like it. It's a little bit longer than many of the stories that we've had in the past. But sit back, relax and enjoy. This story is called The Brave Little Tailor. One summer's morning, a little tailor was sitting on his table by the window. He was in good spirits and sewed with all his might. Then came a peasant woman down the street crying, "Good jam's cheap! Good jam's cheap!" This rang pleasantly in the tailor's ears. He stretched his delicate head out of the window and called, "Come up here, dear woman. Here you will be rid of your goods." The woman came up the 3 steps to the tailor with a heavy basket, and he made her unpack all of the pots for him. He inspected each one, lifted it up, put it to his nose, and at length said, "The jam seems to be good, so weigh me out 4 ounces, dear woman, and if it's a quarter of a pound, that is of no consequence." The woman, who had hoped to find a good sale, gave him what he desired, but went away quite angry and grumbling. "Now, this jam shall be blessed," cried the little tailor, "and give me health and strength." So he bought some bread out of his cupboard, cut himself a piece right across the loaf, and spread the jam over it. "This won't taste bitter," said he, "but I will just finish the jacket I've been making before I take a bite." He laid the bread near him, sewed on, and in his joy made bigger and bigger stitches. In the meantime, the smell of the sweet jam rose to where some flies were sitting in great numbers, and they were attracted and came down. "Ha! Who invited you?" said the little tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. The flies, however, did not understand what he was saying, and would not be turned away, but came back again in ever increasing numbers. The little tailor at last lost all patience, and drew a piece of cloth from the hole under his work table, and saying, "Wait, and I will give it to you," struck it mercilessly on them. When he drew it away and counted, there lay before him no fewer than 7 dead flies, all with legs stretched out. "Are you a fellow of that sort?" said he, and could not help admiring his own bravery. "The whole town shall hear of this," and the little tailor hastened to cut himself a girdle, stitched it, and embroidered on it in large letters, "7 at 1 stroke." "What, the town?" he said. "The whole town shall hear of it, but not only them, the world as well." And his heart wagged with joy like a lamb's tail. The tailor put on the girdle and resolved to go forth into the world, because he thought his workshop was too small for his valour. Before he went away, he sought about the house to see if there was anything which he could take with him. However, he found nothing but an old cheese, and he put that into his pocket. At the front of the door he observed a bird which had caught itself in a thicket. He picked it up and put that into the pocket with the cheese. Now he took to the road boldly, and as he was light and nimble, he felt no fatigue or tiredness. The road led him up a mountain, and when he reached the highest point on it, there sat a powerful giant looking peacefully about him. The little tailor went bravely up, spoke to him, and said, "Good day. So you are sitting there overlooking the widespread world. I'm just on my way thither and want to try my luck. Have you any inclination to go with me?" The giant looked contemptuously at the tailor and said, "You ragamuffin, you miserable creature." "Oh, indeed," answered the little tailor, and unbuttoned his coat and showed the giant the girdle. "There may you read what kind of man I am." The giant read, 7 at 1 stroke. thought that they'd been men the tailor had killed, and began to feel a little respect for the tiny fellow. Nevertheless, he wished to test him first, and took a stone in his hand and squeezed it together so that water dropped out of it. "Do that likewise," said the giant, "if you have strength." "Is that all?" said the tailor. "That is child's play for me," and put his hand into his pocket, brought out the soft cheese, and pressed it until the liquid ran out of it. "Faith," said he, "that was a little better, wasn't it?" The giant did not know what to say, and could not believe his eyes with the little man. Then the giant picked up a stone and threw it so high that the eye could scarcely follow it. "Now, little mite of a man, do thou likewise." "Oh, well thrown," said the tailor, "but after all the stone came down to earth again. I will throw you one that will never come back at all." And he put his hand into his pocket, took out the bird, and threw it into the air. The bird, delighted with its liberty, rose, flew away, and did not come back. "How does that shot please you?" asked the tailor. "You certainly can throw," said the giant, "but now we will see if you can carry anything properly." He took the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which lay there felled on the ground, and said, "If you are strong enough, help me to carry the tree out of the forest." "Readily," answered the little man. "Take the trunk on your shoulders, and I will raise up the branches and twigs. After all, they are the heaviest." The giant took the trunk on his shoulder, but the tailor seated himself on a branch, and the giant, who could not look around, had to carry away the whole tree and the little tailor into the bargain, who behind was quite merry and happy, and whistled a song. 3 tailors rode forth from the gate, as if carrying the tree was child's play. The giant, after he dragged the heavy burden part of the way, could go no further, and cried, "Hark you, I shall have to let the tree fall." The tailor sprang nimbly down, seized the tree with both arms, as if he had been carrying it all along, and said to the giant, "You're such a great fellow, and yet you cannot even carry the tree." And they went on together, and as they passed a cherry tree, the giant laid hold of the top of the tree, where the ripest fruits were hanging, bent it down, gave it into the tailor's hand, and bade him eat. But the little tailor was far too weak to hold the tree, and when the giant let it go, it sprang back again, and the tailor was tossed into the air with it. When he'd fallen down again without injury, the giant said, "What is this? Have you not strength enough to hold the weak twig?" "There is no lack of strength," answered the little tailor. "Do you think that could be anything to a man who struck down 7 at one blow? I leapt over the tree because the huntsmen are shooting down in the thicket. Jump as I did, if you can." The giant made the attempt, but could not get over the tree, and remained hanging in the branches, so that in this also the tailor had the upper hand. The giant said, "If you're such a valiant fellow, come with me into our cavern and spend the night with us." The little tailor was willing and followed him. When they went into the cave, other giants were sitting there by the fire, and each of them had a roasted sheep in his hand and was eating it. The little tailor looked around and thought, "It is much more spacious here than in my workshop." The giant showed him a bed, and he said he was to lie down in it and sleep. The bed, however, was too big for the little tailor, so he did not lie down in it, but crept into a corner. When it was midnight, and the giant thought that the little tailor was lying in a sound sleep, He got up, took a great iron bar, cut through the bed with one blow, and thought he had finished off the tailor for good. With the earliest dawn, the giants went into the forest, and he'd quite forgotten about the little tailor, when all at once he walked up to them quite merrily and boldly. The giants were terrified. They were afraid that they would be all struck and dead by him, and ran away in a great hurry. The little tailor went onwards, always following his own pointed nose. After he walked for a long time, he came to the courtyard of a royal palace, and as he felt weary, he lay down on the grass and fell asleep. Whilst he lay there, the people came and inspected him on all sides, and read on his girdle, 7 at 1 stroke. "Ah," said they, "what does this great warrior do in our midst of peace? He must be a mighty lord." They went and announced him to the king, and gave it as their opinion that if war should break out, this would be a useful man who ought of no account to be allowed to depart. The council pleased the king, and he sent one of his courtiers to the little tailor to offer him military service when he awoke. The ambassador remained standing by the sleeper, waited until he stretched his limbs and opened his eyes, and then gave him the proposal. "For this reason have I come here," the tailor replied. "I am ready to enter the king's service." He was therefore honourably received, and a special dwelling house was assigned to him. The soldiers, however, were set against the little tailor, and wished him to be 1,000 miles away. "What is to be the end of this?" they said amongst themselves, "if we of us can stand against him?" They came to a decision, took themselves in a body to the king, and begged for their dismissal. "We are not prepared," said they, "to stand with a man who kills 7 at 1 stroke." The king was sorry for the sake of one he should lose all of his faithful servants, wished that he'd never set eyes on the tailor, and would willingly have been rid of him again. But he did not dismiss him, for he dreaded lest he should strike out and all his people die, and place himself on the royal throne. He thought about it for a long time, and at last found good advice. He sent to the little tailor and caused him to be informed that as he was such a great warrior, he had one request to make of him. In a forest of his country lived 2 giants who caused great mischief with their robbing, murdering, ravaging, and burning, and no one could approach them without being put in danger of death. If the tailor conquered and killed those 2 giants, he would give him his only daughter to be his wife, and half of his kingdom as a dowry. Likewise, 100 horsemen should go with him to assist him. "This would indeed be a fine thing for a man like me," thought the little tailor. "One is not often offered a beautiful princess and half a kingdom, certainly not every day of one's life." "Oh, yes," he replied, "I will soon subdue the giants, and do not require the help of 100 horsemen to do it. Just stay waiting here, and I alone will soon finish off the giants." Then he bounded into the forest and looked about right and left. After a while he perceived both giants. They lay sleeping under a tree and snored so that the branches waved up and down. The little tailor, not idle, gathered 2 pockets full of stones, and with these climbed up the tree. When he was halfway up, he slipped down by a branch until he sat just above the sleepers, and then let one stone after another fall onto the breast of one of the giants. For a long time the giant felt nothing, but at last he awoke, pushed his friend, and said, "Why are you knocking me?" "You must be dreaming," said the other. "I am not knocking you." They laid themselves down to sleep again, and then the tailor threw a stone down on the second. "What is the meaning of this?" cried the other. "Why are you pelting me?" "I am not pelting you," answered the first, growling. They disputed it for a time, but as they were weary they let the matter rest, and their eyes closed once more. The little tailor began his game again, picked out the biggest stone and threw it with all his might on the breast of the first giant. "That is too bad," cried he, and sprang up like a madman and pushed his companion against the tree until it shook. The other paid him back in the same way, and they got into such a rage that they tore up trees and belaboured each other so long that at last they both fell down dead on the ground at the same time. Then the little tailor leapt down. "It's a lucky thing," said he, "that they did not tear up the tree on which I'm sitting, or I should have to spring on to another like a squirrel. But we tailors are nimble." He drew out his sword and gave each of them a couple of thrusts in the breast, and then went on to the horseman and said, "The work is done. I have finished both of them off, but it was hard work." They tore up trees in their saw need and defended themselves with them, but all this to no purpose with a man like me who can still kill 7 at one blow. But you're not wounded," said the horseman. "You need not concern yourselves about that," answered the tailor. "They have not bent one single hair of mine." The horseman would not believe him, and rode into the forest. There they found the giants in their own blood, and all round the torn up trees. The little tailor demanded of the king the promised reward. He, however, repented of his promise, and again thought how he could rid himself of the tailor. "Before you receive my daughter and the half of my kingdom," said he to the tailor, "you must perform one more heroic deed. In the forest roams a unicorn which does great harm, and you must catch it first. I fear one unicorn still less than 2 giants. 7 at one blow is my kind of affair." He took a rope and an axe with him, went forth into the forest, and again bade those who were sent with him to wait outside. He had not long to wait. The unicorn soon came towards him and rushed directly onwards towards the tailor, as if it would gore him with its horn without any fuss. "Softly, softly, it can't be done as quickly as that," said he, and stood still until the animal was quite close, and then sprang nimbly behind a tree. The unicorn ran against the tree with all its strength, and struck its horn so fast into the trunk that it did not have the strength to draw it out again, and thus it was caught. "Now I have him," said the tailor, and came out from behind the tree and put a rope around its neck, and then with his axe he hewed the horn out of the tree, and when all was ready he led the beast away and took it to the king. the king still would not give him the promised reward, and made a third demand. Before the wedding, the tailor was to catch him a wild boar that made great havoc in the forest, and that the huntsmen should give him their help. Willingly, said the tailor. This is child's play. He did not take the huntsman with him into the forest, and they were well pleased that he did not, for the wild boar had several times injured many of them, and they had no inclination to have that happen again. When the boar perceived the tailor, it ran on him with foaming mouth and whetted tusks, and was about to throw him to the ground, but the hero fled and sprang into a chapel which was nearby, and up to the window at once, and in one bound out again. The boar ran in after him, but the tailor ran outside and shut the door behind it, and then the raging beast, which was much too heavy and awkward to leap out of the window, was caught. The little tailor called to the huntsmen that they might see the boar was a prisoner with their own eyes. The tailor went to the king, who was now, whether he liked it or not, obliged to keep his promise and give him his daughter and half of the kingdom. Had he known that it was no warlike hero, but a little tailor who was standing before him, it would have hurt his heart still more than it did. The wedding was held with great magnificence and small joy, and out of a tailor a king was made. After some time, the young queen heard her husband say in his dreams at night, "Boy, make me the doublet and patch the pantaloons, or else I will wrap the yard measure over your ears." Then she discovered what kind of job and what state of life the young lord had been born, and next morning complained to her father of the wrongs that had been done to her, and begged him to help her get rid of her husband, who was nothing else but a tailor. The king comforted her and said, "Leave your bedroom door open this night, and my servant shall stand outside, and when he's fallen asleep shall go in and bind him, and take him on board a ship which will carry him off into the wide world." The princess was satisfied with this, but the king's armour-bearer, who had heard all, was friendly with the tailor, the new young lord, and informed him of the plot. "I'll put a screw into this business," said the little tailor. At night he went to bed with his wife at the usual time, and when she thought he had fallen asleep, she got up, opened the door, and lay down again. The little tailor, who was only pretending to be asleep, began to cry out in a clear voice, "Boy, make me the doublet and patch me the pantaloons, or I will wrap the yard measure over your ears. I smote 7 at one blow. I killed 2 giants. I brought away 1 unicorn and caught a wild boar. And am I fear to those who are standing outside the room?" When the men outside heard the tailor speaking like this, they were overcome by a great dread, and ran as if a wild huntsman were behind them, and none of them would venture anything further against him. So the little tailor was and remained a king to the end of his life. The end of the story, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions that you'd like to send in, or some writing or drawings or anything at all, any kind of communication to me here trapped in the shed, then the email is as ever thestoryshed@gmail.com. That's the storyshed@gmail.com. And thank you for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. And for the time being, bye bye. Bye now. Bye. Bye bye. Bye.